The Walt Disney Company's stock is dropping. No, we are not financial experts, and we are not here to help you make financial decisions. But one thing is verifiably true, and that is that Disney is dropping. Now, articles out there are beginning to link the fiasco with the Disney stock price with the fiasco of the Disney box office. And we shan't forget that Disney is also featuring a fiasco when it comes to their streaming. All of it coming together now to spook investors. Is it a worthy reason to be spooked for, though? We'll chat about it right now. And folks, we are here to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of that culture curve. It's what we do each and every day here on the WDW Pro channel. Joining me to chat about the Disney stock, the Disney box office, Disney streaming, Disney parks, and all of it down, we have Michelle of Force of Light, and we have Mike, Mexican Iron Man, here to give us that wonderful financial knowledge. Now, before we go into this, let me just remind all of you that we are not here to give you financial advice. If you are seeking financial advice, please seek out a competent, qualified financial advisor with all of the qualifications necessary and certifications in your own area. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it, the notification bell. All right, guys, we are going to be diving into an article that is out of Yahoo Finance, and this is really what tells me that we're at a point now where this can no longer be ignored. When it starts coming out of these moderate to left platforms where they begin actually discussing that Disney is struggling, and they just say it right there in the headline. This really is the point now where I think this can no longer be managed by a narrative. The other thing about this, and the reason it's worthy of a conversation, is because it's tied to some degree to The Little Mermaid. And we're going to talk about why in just a moment. But here's the article. Disney's Little Mermaid, a test for company's film strategy amid recent struggles. This by Alexandra Canal. And I'm going to assume that it's Alexandra, but we'll go with that for now. It says Disney's live-action The Little Mermaid secured $118.6 million in its four-day opening weekend debut. Reminder to all of you out there, when adjusted for inflation, that means it is significantly below attendance, that is, audience participation versus Aladdin, which came out in 2019. Remember that movie ticket prices are up something like 25% since 2019 until now. That's just shy of the $120 million forecast. Oh, no, it's not. This movie, 5 days before it came out, was pegged at coming out to about $140 million with the opportunity to go above. They have adjusted that at the last minute so that they can try to make this be less negative for them, if I can talk. But still a solid start to the summer box office season and the fifth highest total for any Memorial Day weekend ever. Of course, remember, with the way that movie ticket prices are inflating, it's almost impossible not to make that list if you're a big movie on Memorial Day weekend. And by the way, folks, if you're wondering, if you think, well, Pro is just being cynical about this. No. They don't write articles like this for movies that are doing exceedingly well.
They don't do headlines like this.
Absolutely. They're defensive in the headline. Last summer, Pixar's Toy Story prequel Lightyear fell short of expectations, securing just $51 million in its domestic debut before going on to gross a mere $118 million in theaters ahead of an expedited Disney Plus release. More recently, the animated film Strange World, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid, cost the company a reported $200 million after it opened to dismal reviews during Thanksgiving week, marking one of the worst flops of 2022. Now, what they don't mention here is that The Little Mermaid could be on track to having that sort of a loss as well. You say, how? Well, because it has an $800 million price to make a profit. How? Well, it cost $250 million to make it. We believe at minimum it has a $150 million marketing budget behind it. And you put those two together and realize that Disney is likely to only see about 50% of total revenues back to them. And you can see that it costs $800 million to make a profit. Now, I am noticing, panel, that people are getting nervous about Disney. They're getting nervous about this path they've taken forward. Of course, we know that the Mermaid movie has been filled with controversy. It's not a good movie. We don't need to tread that over again. If you look at the verified audience, if you look at all audience, and if you look at top critics, you'll see a vast disparity in everything else. They've just come out and said now that they're manipulating the rating scores on these other websites. It's not a good movie, but this is now a pattern for Disney, and it now seems to be getting to the point where it's affecting the stock. I want to go to Mike first on this. Mike, you are the financial guru here. Tell me, how long do you think that Disney can go producing subpar quality that people are not interested in before it truly impacts the company, or are we already there?
I think we're already here. I'm surprised we're here already in May. Already. Full disclosure, I'm not a stock bond trading guy. I'm an accountant. I do corporate tax, finance, accounting for corporations around the country. I am a Disney stockholder, and I watch with great interest what happens, and I have been for a long time. So there's four things. One is that the parks and experiences division has always made money and provided so much cash that it really, the way the performance of the other divisions of the company don't matter as much in the aggregate, because they literally have had a cash register. Now, your channel and your video, as well as other places around social media, has done a phenomenal job of covering what that park experience isn't like anymore. We won't go into that now. The other elements, though, is Disney Plus, which we know has racked up $9 to $12 billion. But depending on how you look at their content and their write-downs, between $9 and $12 billion worth of loss. And so that is a huge black hole in the financials of Disney. It has been since it was launched, and it's not gotten any better. It's only continued to be bad. The third element has to be a ticking time bomb, which is this deal with Hulu, which is that Hulu outperforms Disney Plus and by and large in a lot of different metrics. And that's got a price tag of anywhere from that 1/3 share of $9 to $12 billion on the low side. Probably if they get in a negotiation battle with Comcast, could be, good Lord, it could be $15 to $23 billion, which is cash I don't see that they have. And I don't know if that I don't even know how or where they're going to borrow it, or why they'd be willing to, because interest rates are at the highest they've ever been, and the corporate finance debt market right now is brutal. Now, the fourth area is what we're talking about today, which has to do with IPs and films. Their studios division, whether it's Lucasfilm, whether it's Marvel, whether it's their own releases from properties that they have with these live actions. The thing about this, Pro, is that if you're a fan of Disney characters, and there aren't that many to be that fans of, Little Mermaid would certainly be one, but these things with films that, if they lose 50 million, 100 million, 200 million, there's a case to be made that doesn't really matter in the aggregate. But you keep losing 50, 100, 200, 300, 400 million over and over again. More importantly is that although those numbers are a small percentage of the total cash that this company collects or has been, it starts to become a big problem, because, Pro, these movie releases, and if they don't perform from a box office standpoint, that those numbers are public and they get covered. And the thing is that when it comes to Wall Street, they're not delving into the financials that we've done here on this channel and other channels, Valiant Renegade and others. They're not going into the SEC filings like we've done multiple times. But when you have when you have failure after failure after failure, there comes a point in time like, well, wait a minute. It's like this article's doing it right now. And I hadn't seen this article before you put up on the screen. So I'm reacting live. I didn't read it before we got on. You put it up and I'm just reading it with you live. And so I'm reacting. And it's one of those things like, it's almost like, we've got Force of Light. It's like you go to a restaurant, you're like, remember that time we had here and the chicken was really bad or the fish was not so good. And then how many times do you have to have a bad experience before it starts dawning on you? Holy cow.
There's other restaurants.
This is not a good restaurant. This is not a good company. This is not a company that's capable of pulling successes. And I'll tell you this much. The days for Iger being able to say, well, this is not my fault, it was the previous guy, those days are gone. Honeymoon over.
Yes, honeymoon definitely over. Michelle, Mike brings up a fantastic point talking about the repercussions of the IPs dropping in terms of interest levels with society at large. I mean, we're looking at the international interest in Little Mermaid dropping off a cliff.
Yeah.
Make excuse if you will for whatever the reason. It doesn't matter when it comes down to is money coming into the coffers of the mouse. But here's the other issue. The other issue is that this is killing their merchandising, because if the movies don't drive families into the theaters, then the families don't leave there, go get a Happy Meal and stop by one of the big box retailers to pick up an action figure or a dolly. And when we look at the Little Mermaid, for example, This thing, they're talking about, it almost made projections that we lowered already. But, what they don't say is now it goes up against Spider-Verse 2.
Mhm.
There's a full roster of June movies coming out. This thing's probably going to wind up somewhere around $500,000 in total revenues. It needs $800 million to make a profit, and it doesn't get better for Disney. This is the summer of disaster. Elemental, currently tracking, that's a Pixar film, by the way. I know not many people have ever heard of it. It's tracking to do worse than Strange World, if you can believe it. Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny, one of the most expensive movies ever made, likely needs $1 billion to make a profit, sort of like what we talked about with Avatar, The Way of Water. But rather than the James Cameron effect, you're looking at Lucasfilm. I mean, I can't imagine how poorly the film is going to do based on the faux pas that they put it out 5 weeks early to be screened, and the critics are decimating it. Michelle, how long until Disney gets the message? What does it take for them to realize that this is a dead end? They can't continue to push whatever this agenda is that they have in every single film.
I mean, if they're not waking up at this point, they at least have to start to be, because it's just like all the things Mike went through. It's not just one thing. It's like multiple things kind of collapsing in around Disney. I mean, you guys have said it. They aren't too big to fail necessarily. Like, they do have risk. And I think the bottom line, even you see that with the stock, people have just lost confidence in Disney at this point. Like, it's gone. It's like you're saying about the restaurant. We've been there, it's stunk, and we know that now. We've been played many times at this point, and you see that all across the board with their movies and just everything. People have lost confidence in Disney, and the shares, everything's just falling. And if that doesn't begin to wake them up, I really don't know what is, because it's hard to believe, kind of as a business-minded person, they haven't already woken up. But I don't know. Well, I think time will tell.
Keep in mind, I mean, Mike is talking about they don't have the money to buy Hulu in our estimation. We don't know what they're going to do to manage to close that deal. Comcast is basically going to financial war with them, saying you're not going to get it for that 10, 11 million or 10, 11 billion that you put out there, pretending everything was cushy and kind behind the scenes. That's not going to happen. But when you're losing now, okay, so, in a world where Disney was flush with cash, you can take a bunch of these hits and just keep on rolling. And that's where they've been in the past. When you're losing $100, $200 million over and over and over, I mean, you're basically just paying those off with tax write-downs when you wipe out Willow off of your streaming service. Now let's take a look at this.
And I was just going to say, and that goes, what I was saying about multiple things coming down. You guys covered the Galactic Star Cruiser and how much that cost this company. I mean, it's just been on all fronts. Like, it's just, they've been hit for sure.
For anybody who wants to know how much it's worth total, go look at what they're attempting to write it down for just by shutting it down for 2 quarters. And you'll see, oh my gosh, how much money must they have spent on this thing? But continuing on in the article, it says, Disney CEO Bob Iger referenced the Super Mario Brothers movie during the company's latest earnings call, suggesting more upside to its own theatrical business. This is so funny. This is delusional. How you could possibly get more upside for Disney out of this. It's like a football team that goes out on the field, gets decimated, destroyed, routed out of the stadium, and you come out with an article and say, well, there's real upside for the rest of the season. Can't get worse than this. Anyway, let's read it. Allow me to digress for a moment to congratulate Universal for the tremendous success of Super Mario Brothers. Iger said on the call, it was the first thing he said, congratulating the franchise that, by the way, will soon be in the parks next to Walt Disney World. We're talking about Universal Studios. It certainly proves people love to be entertained in theaters around the world, and it gives us reason to be optimistic about the movie business. When he said that, by the way, Mike, that was one of the dumbest things I have ever heard come out of a CEO. It was one of the most self-defeated statements ever. Let's just run through this. I want to break this down for people. It certainly proves people love to be entertained in theaters around the world. Wow. That is deep level stuff, Mr. Iger. Nobody knew that one until now.
That's almost
like Super Mario came out and proved it.
That's almost like, Michelle, guess what? People like to eat food.
People love tacos. They love burritos. Who could have possibly seen it? So, I mean, I just see this as this is getting embarrassing now. And then on top of that, you can always tell when the spinners out there, those who are spinning the news, can always tell the truth by looking between the lines. 3 reasons why Disney stock will bounce back in 2023. This is from the Motley Fool. Yeah, what is it bouncing back from? Well, it's not bouncing back from a good place, is it? It's bouncing back at a very negative place. Shares of the media giant entered the Memorial Day holiday weekend at 88.29. And as we said, yesterday it dropped even lower. Now, Mike, you're not going to believe what the Motley Fool is putting out there. Disney is dominating the box office again, baby. Yeah, wow. They're flopping every single film. Every single film. Guardians of the Galaxy, The Little Mermaid, Elemental, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny will almost certainly lose money.
The trend is improving. Here's a blatant line. The trend is improving as 2023. Folks are coming back to movies, and Disney is leading the way. No, it's not.
No, Universal Studios or Universal is.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's not. In fact, it's funny because this how tells you just how genuine it is. Yahoo Finance on their webpage, if you go to the Disney homepage right now, if I look at the short, mid, and long-term performance outlook, they're all red and negative pointed down.
I can't believe it. I just can't believe it, Mike. Look at this, though. Disney Plus is finally improving on the bottom line.
Oh, wait, let me translate that for you. They're losing less billions than the billions they were used to losing.
That's right. And failure in this article to note that, oh, by the way, they lost hundreds of thousands of subscribers in North America last quarter, the same quarter that The Mandalorian released. No mention of that. And then finally, they say theme parks have been a breathtaking ride. Yes, if by that you mean that they have been sustaining the company while all else came crumbling down. So I just want to hand it to both of you. I'm curious about this in particular. Where is the bottom? What do we have to hit for Disney? And of course, we're not giving financial advice here, but where do we have to hit for this company to simply fall prostrate in front of us and say, enough, we will now change?
I personally think it could be this year, because it's like we've named already the losses that have built up and like how bad it keeps getting. And when you look at the movies that are coming out, Indiana Jones, Little Mermaid, Elementals, the Marvels, or whatever it's called.
Oh, the Marvels is going to do fantastic. It's just going to kill it at the box office.
Yes, all these movies are going to lose them 50 million minimum, up to like a few hundred million. And it's just like coming, like one thing after another is coming. And it's like, it's really bad now. And it's just going to keep getting worse the rest of the year, because they were so far in that, like, they're too far back to look back. I mean, they're too far in to look back now. They just got to go through it at this point. So, I mean, I just think hopefully by the end of this year, things are just, they're unsustainable the way that they are.
You know, I agree with everything Michelle just said, everything 100%. And she's right. I didn't really think about it like almost like she's saying it's like waves on the beach. They're just going to keep crashing. I was looking more going backwards, but she's right. If you look forward, yeah, you're right. It's going to start stacking, Michelle. 50, 100, 150, 200, 300 mil. And pretty soon we're going to be at $1 billion. You know, I just thought of something else about the merchandise angle you mentioned, Pro. And this is just a real world experience. This weekend I was in Connecticut with my 10-year-old. And not only do kids not want this merchandise from this particular film, not only do they not want to buy it, because he hasn't asked me to buy any of it, right? But we couldn't find him his favorite. There was a Subway that wasn't open. That's his favorite. He wanted a Subway sandwich to get his favorite sandwich, and instead we had to go to McDonald's, got him a Happy Meal, chicken McNuggets, Not only
those toys look terrible in the Happy Meal, by the way. It just
dawned on me that not only did he not want to see the movie, because I did ask him. I said, "Do you want to see it?" And he said, "No, I'm not interested in it." But he didn't even open up the free little thing and play with it when he was in the hotel room by himself.
Well, the toys look creepy. I mean, I hate to say it, but they look creepy. They're
well, he
weird.
Got a King Triton and he looked at it and he left it and he didn't even open that. I mean, to me, he's 10. He didn't even open. I mean,
if you haven't seen the film, King Triton looks terrible. So I mean, he looks like a drowned rat. It's no good at all. But this is what we've got now, Mike. Here's another point for you. I'm curious. I want you to touch on, we have to remember that not everybody watches every single video we put out. And so before we wrap this up, I want you to touch on the amount of money that Disney currently has in their emergency fund, which is quickly dwindling. But I also want to bring this up. I want to bring up the fact that as we look at what Disney is doing with their properties, they are headed for a major roadblock, because it's not just that they are dropping with each one of these releases. It's not just that the subscribers are leaving. It's not just the flops at the theaters, but there's a writer's strike. And the longer that writer's strike goes on, the more and more we are headed for a dead end where there's no content later. Perhaps that's even good for Disney at this point. I mean, it's better to not have content to release than to release content that's losing. But Mike, walk us through what you've learned. You and Jonas J. Campbell have done a fantastic job investigating sort of this money situation for Disney. So explain it for the audience and why this matters so much.
If you look at their financials for the full month last month on April 1st, I mean, if you take there's a very popular formula in financials. It's called working capital. And working capital is basically what's all the cash, accounts receivable, everything I have that's liquid. I subtract everything that's got to go out the door. How much do I have left over? And it's, a little bit more than 20 some odd billion minus 20 some odd billion that they owe. But basically they're left with 207 million as of their full month last month, which was in April. And that's just crazy because that's essentially, depending on the given week of any given month, they've got 3 to 6 months worth of operating cash. That's just ridiculous. Now, in terms of actual cash in the bank, they've been averaging between 10 and 11 billion. Some people say, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, if this Comcast deal comes along and they've got to spend 9 to 12 billion on the low side and
minimum
15 to 22 billion on the higher side of their 1/3 interest, they can't even write a check from their own bank account that'll clear right now.
And they've already relayed that they're going to buy Hulu. I mean, there's no way out of it. Basically,
well, they have to buy it because they want to shore up their Disney Plus, and mathematically, okay, let's just say that I don't know, they're going to borrow what, 10 billion on the low side. Interest rates right now, at best, are going to get some commercial paper. At best, 8%. That means bringing Hulu over means that they're going to have to make 800 million just to service the loan. Where's that coming from?
I want to bring up one last thing before we exit. There's been some criticism.
87, 82. Jesus.
There has been some criticism that we have been too negative about Disney, that we're too focused on being negative here. And I just want to say to people, what do you want us to do when it's at a 5-year low, tickling the 5-year low? If we look at this, I mean, we're there. That drop back here in March 16th of 2020, that's the pandemic. That's what crashed the stock. We're there now, and
no
there's
pandemic.
No pandemic. We're just there.
No pandemic.
So I don't know how to cover a company that has dropped from, let's look at the high from 180. Wait, no, it's not even that. It's from 197.16 to 87.82 in this short of a period. I don't know how you want me to report about this company unless we just tell you the truth. And the truth is that we're at a 5-year low, and I don't see the bottom yet. And this company has got to get things turned around immediately. It has to turn it around immediately. It is headed for a really, really negative situation. And I want to remind, real quick, Mike, and then I want your thought on it, but I want to remind everybody, Disney had a great 10 to 12-year run. Before that, Disney was never the biggest entertainment company on the planet. They bought Pixar, they bought Marvel, they had this fantastic run, and they have killed their golden goose. They repeatedly treated themselves as if they were too big to fail, as if they were able to modify society at large, change the socio-political beliefs of people with their entertainment. And they forgot to continue to be the Disney that people fell in love with. It was a long climb to get where they were, and they have dropped precipitously out of that position. Mike, you had a thought?
I was just going to say, I don't know what Michelle feels about this, but to me, especially being the dad of a 10-year-old, I think Disney is now a tired brand that doesn't have anything to offer. And although when I was a kid, it was the go-to entertainment for parks, experience, or whatever, Disney has always been the go-to company for a family. Clearly, on a global, worldwide basis, that's not the case in terms of cinema, and clearly that's not the case. And I mean, it's just looking back at it, just as take my finance hat off for a second, I just think this company has done it to themselves, right, Michelle?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're just not giving their customer what the customer wants is kind of bottom line. I mean, we just saw that with the Little Mermaid. I mean, clearly, let's just be real. People are tired of all the different, again, all the stuff they've been doing, all the disappointments and taking your kids when things are expensive to the theater and just being disappointed, and they're just done. And I think, I mean, as that article kind of shows, that's why things are the way that they are.
Do you think, Michelle, that it's easier for them to hide behind some of the bad stuff, like say on Disney Plus, like Obi-Wan, you were disappointed, I was disappointed, that kind of stuff. But with these movies, though, I think the movies they're so splashy. It's much more of a billboard effect, I think. Right, Pro? Right, Michelle? What do you think?
Oh,
Well, let me say this.
Absolutely. Kathleen Kennedy admitted that's one of the reasons she had gone to so much to Disney like TV instead of movies, because they get less criticism. She literally said that.
I love the fact that you all brought up ObiWan Kenobi, because it's the exact same problem. Here's what they do. With both ObiWan Kenobi and with The Little Mermaid, there is no way in this world that you can tell me that executives never looked at the show and the movie and realized this is a giant turd. And I mean that because ObiWan Kenobi was terrible.
It was bad.
The Little Mermaid is a terrible movie, but Halle Bailey is giving it her best. And the other actors, minus Awkwafina, they're giving it their best. They can't help that the director, writers, set design, costume design, CGI artists, that they're all incompetent. It is one of the worst made films I have ever seen in the last 20 years. And what happened was that the company decided, rather than saying, we need to spend more time, we're going to delay these and fix them. No, they decided that the correct answer was to use their minority actors as ethnic shields against criticism. And therefore, they made a choice that they're going to split the audience in the world into a binary decision. Either you like the turd that we are producing, which would be a turd if anybody of a pale color were starring in it, and everyone would be allowed to say, this is a turd. Or you can dislike it and we'll say that you all are horrible. And that is not working. It didn't work for Obi-Wan. It is not working for The Little Mermaid, because you cannot convince people, like we said with going to the restaurant, you cannot serve them terrible food and go pick out your dark-skinned server and say, you go serve this to them, and if they don't like the food, we'll call them a bad name. That doesn't work, and frankly, it is offensive to me to use people of any background as your shield against criticism, because the white guys and the white girls at the company cannot get their act together and make a good film.
No.
All right, I see heads nodding.
Agree.
I think we're all in agreement.
We're with you, man. I'm with you, 100%.
All right, well, Force of Light, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
Yes, you guys can find me and my sister at Force of Light Entertainment on YouTube. Also, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram there.
And Mike, where can people find you, even though you're not a YouTuber?
No, Midnight Sage After Dark, and follow me on Twitter at MikeKnowlSJ. Thanks for having me, Pro.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have both of you on here. You are both experts in your fields, and it's quite the pleasure. I know the audiences love to see you. Folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing. You better believe, keep having fun.
Say it ain't so. This just in. Disney lost money on another movie. Why, that can't be. I thought that John Lasseter fella over at Pixar was cranking out the latest hits, and Marvel was unstoppable, and Disney princesses were a thing, and Star Wars was a multi-billion-dollar money-making franchise.
I overheard you talking about Disney, and wanted to let you know you're really behind the ball. If you were getting great articles from thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel, you'd actually be ahead of the culture curve and have entertainment explained.